Simon's carriage to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and would return to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." Jesus answered, "Those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet. Their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew he was going to betray him, and that was why he said, "Not everyone is clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed to do them."
Right, so we're in our part 11 of Knowing You Jesus series. If we get to know the real Jesus through the real scriptures, find out exactly who he is. Jesus is rapidly heading towards an extremely long and violent and excruciating death. He'll soon be hanging between heaven and earth for 6 long hours, and he'll lose large amounts of blood and water. And if that doesn't kill him first, he'll suffocate or asphyxiate. Because each time he needs to breathe, he has to push up on the nails that are pinned into the wood of the cross so that he can fill his lungs. And then again until exhaustion kicks in. It's one of the most horrendous forms of death known to man. And the end is near for Jesus. And the worst thing is he knows it. So what's his reaction to what's coming in the next 24 hours? Can he not get it out of his mind? Is he just unbelievably focused on it? Because I think I would. But he isn't. Not at all. He continues to show to his disciples his love, even more than before. Having loved, verse 1, having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. Amazingly, he is still not focused on self. How could he do that? Because he refuses and always has refused to look inwardly. He looks up to the Father and he looks out to show love to those around him. That's what he's always done. That's what he's still doing. Because the Christian life is all about focus. It's all about where you look and who you look to. You look at your circumstances and you'll sink. You look at self and you'll sink. You keep your eyes on Jesus and you will walk on top of the waves of the storm. Yes, there's still a storm, but you can walk through it. But if you take your eyes off, just like Peter on the waves, down you go. So what's the secret then of Jesus' fixed focus? Well, at least 3 things. One is this. Jesus knew why he was here. Verse 1. Just before the Passover feast, Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. What does that mean? It means he came with the express purpose to die for the sins of humanity and make a way back to God for them. He came with the express purpose of rising from the dead 3 days later and ascending back to the Father. Why? So those who believe in him can also rise and be with the Father. Just as Jesus knew why he was here, you, if you're a Christian, know why you're here. You're here to deny self, take up your cross daily and follow him. Luke 9:23. That means, take up your cross, it means we will have trials and difficulties, and we're to expect trials and difficulties. And we know that already through our lives we've had those difficulties, but the key is to not focus on self, but to look to Jesus and walk through him, through them, with him, just like he walked through with his Father, through his trials. Jesus did it literally, took up his cross. You and I are called to do it spiritually. The cross is that of the trials of following Jesus. And what's the second thing that is the secret of Jesus' fixed focus in the most horrendous nightmare that's going round? He knew where he'd come from and where he was going. 3. Jesus knew that he'd come from God and was returning to God. The one we now call Jesus existed before he was born into this world as a human. That is not true of any other human being ever to be born. You and I didn't exist before we were born. He did. Someone once said this: animals have a beginning and an end. I'm so sorry, but your dog or your cat is going to that. We'll all be animals, but not the one that we look at. So to say. Jesus didn't come to die for animals. He came to take the place of the human. I'm sad because my little Matt, the black lab, he's gone. Well, there'll be another little man. Not the same one, in heaven. Animals have a beginning and an end. Humans have no beginning. There we go. Humans have a beginning and no end. God has no beginning and no end. There's the difference. You had a beginning. I had a beginning. But now the Lord has brought you to himself if you're a Christian, and you know exactly now where you've come from, where he dragged you and pulled you out of the mess that you once had when you were in control. You know where you've come from, and how he now set your feet upon a rock. And what is that rock? He's the rock. And your rock's steady if you plant your feet on him. He's your foundation. You know where you're going as well. You know where you've been, you know where you're going. You're returning to God, just like Jesus did, to live with him in eternity, of total bliss and peace and joy forever and ever and ever. We can't imagine that, can we? Because our peace is broken lately, our joy goes up and down. But on that time, and also we think, well, won't we get fed up with joy? Or won't we get fed up with peace? And won't we forget it because we'll just get bored of it or used to it? No, because you will perpetually be stimulated to rejoice more and more as eternity goes on, because God never runs out. What a reason, when you really focus on what it is to be a Christian, what a reason it is to be alive. How amazing it is to be back in sync with your Creator and begin that journey with him, becoming more and more what he created you to be. That's the end game, to become more and more like Jesus. And the incredible thing is you have met your Creator. And now you know him. And now you can walk with him. Shane Pruitt says this: the two most important days in a person's life are the day they were born and the day when they were born again. Yeah, exactly. And then thirdly, what's the secret of Jesus' fixed focus? He knew who he was. Oh, if only this world knew who they were and why they were created. Verse 13. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. You see, Jesus didn't only come from God, he is God. God the Father, verse 3, has placed all things under his power. And Jesus never shied away, but actually embraced and received worship as God. When Thomas, doubting Thomas, remember, he finally realised who Jesus was, and he says to Jesus, my Lord and my God. Then Jesus told him, he didn't say, oh, don't say that, don't say that. He said, because you have seen me and you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed. That's me and Matthew. Jesus also said, 10 verse 30 of John, I and the Father are one. What was the reaction to the Jews when they heard that? They tried to stone him, they tried to seize him, they tried to kill him. Why? Because they knew only too well what Jesus was saying. He was saying, I am equal with God. That's what he was saying. And that's why the Jews hated him. Because they didn't believe him. Jesus, God the Son, was God, is God, and always will be God. He never became God. You can't become God, you just are God. 740 years before Jesus was born, God the Son appeared to the Old Testament prophet Isaiah. And we read this, 6 verse 1 of Isaiah. I saw the Lord seated on a throne, high and exalted, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him were seraphs, these sort of flying things, and they were calling to one another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty. That's the one who's in the temple. The whole earth is full of his glory. At the sound of their voices and doorposts, the threshold shook, and the temple was filled with smoke. And Isaiah says this, Woe to me! I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among the people of unclean lips, and my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty. Now guess what John says in 12 verse 41? He says, Isaiah said this because he saw Jesus' glory and spoke about him. Before Jesus he took a human body, he appeared in the Old Testament many times and was worshipped as God. But you know who you are too. Because now God calls you his son or his daughter, and he is your father. It's quite incredible because there is no better identity, and the world would give anything if their eyes were open to know what their real identity can be. But because there is no better identity than to know Almighty God is your dad, looking out for you, and you're his child. Because when you realise that truth should and must ooze security and total belonging and sense of being loved by the most important person in the universe, who not only notices you, but brings you into his family. He wants you to be family. 1 John 3 verse 1 says this, How great is the love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And here's your identity. And that is what we are. You've got to grab hold of it. It's not just a fact up here. You've got to strut around knowing you're a son of the Most High God and daughter of the Most High God. No shame and no fear. Bask in the love of the Father. Lift up your head. Invite those who haven't yet. You remember we said this before, when you're in the playground, my dad's thinking of your dad. And it would go on and on and on and on. Well, why didn't you invite some who haven't yet come into God's family and say, well, my dad's thinking of your dad, why don't you come and see him? And then he could be your dad. You know what I mean? So now, having loved his own, verse 1, who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of himself. Because now in this passage, Jesus' love goes up again. And it's ending with giving his own life on the cross, very shortly, for all who come to him for forgiveness. And here, on the cross, he pays the ultimate price, physically, psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. And he wasn't ever forced to go to the cross. He chose to go to the cross. He and the Father agreed that he would go all the way to death so he might bring life to those who come to him. Why? Because everything that Jesus does is born out of an undying, indestructible love for those who created. Embrace it, my friend. Receive it and accept it. Revel in it. Bask in it. And come to Jesus if you haven't already. But in order to do this, he takes on the role of not just a servant, but less than a servant. The blameless one is declared a criminal. Scum of the earth in those days, so they thought. The guiltless one is pronounced guilty. The one who with just a word could slay his enemies becomes a scapegoat and a punching bag and is beaten and killed by the ones he came to save. Only because he let them. And he was driven on by his love for you and me. So now the Most High God is going to be treated like the lowest of men. Why? So his offer of salvation includes the lowest of men, as well as the highest of high. So the king becomes a servant king. Now, you'd think I would choose servant king by going Catholic at the end of this. I'm not going to have never mind. Sorry, I know probably and it's been over Sunday. Like shouting in the This is a great song.
About decades.
Oh, no. Nobody ever stopped singing it. In the end, it's like an old record, you don't listen to it. Terrible, I know. It's true. The king becomes the servant king. Why? To show his grace and mercy and love to those who don't deserve any of it. Why? Or how is he going to show that to those that don't deserve it? By serving them. So he washes the feet of his disciples. Verse 2, the evening meal was being served. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So in that confidence, he gets up from the meal, he takes off his outer clothing, wraps a towel around his waist, and after that pours water into a basin, begins to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. I don't know if any of you have ever gone into the paving strength garden. Yeah? Quite a few. You can get it free with podcast. If you say that, yeah, some have done that. Julie has a free one every year, doesn't she? So, there's something called the barfus walk, where you have to take your shoes off and so you're barefooted. My little tootsies are so delicate that when I did it really hurt. I didn't like it. It was rough. There were stones, there was gravelly things, and I thought, no, I'm not doing it. The kids loved it, and I was just mad because it hurt. Well, in those days, they walked everywhere with their feet, and their feet got filthy all the time. But they would develop this hard skin on the bottom of the soles of their feet to protect their feet. So they probably wouldn't feel much. But sometimes you get grass in there, metal stuck in your feet. Whenever you entered someone's house, the servant and the slave would be the one that washed your feet. And it was a filthy job. Some people hate their feet, don't they? And they hate others' feet. I mean, would you like to wash my feet?
No.
I did have a shout, so I always forget. But you can imagine, especially if you hate them, washing filthy, dirty feet, dirty nails, almost digging out, like chiropodist, digging out all the filth out of the nails. Maybe even bleeding feet, and maybe they stink because they've troubled something. As we do, don't we? It's disgusting. And it was especially important for that reason to wash feet before eating in those days, because they didn't sit at the table, they lied at the table like this, and their feet were right near the table with the food on. So you don't want filthy feet and putting cheesy feet into the cheese that's supposed to be eaten. So it was especially important because the table being centre, their feet's right there, so the feet had to be clean. So it was an act of great humility, and no one that went to that house would ever dream of washing feet. That was for the slaves, that was for the servants. So what incredible humility as Jesus, who is God in a human body, decides to go and do such a task. You see, the Most High, unbelievably, is humble. It's amazing that the God who is all-seeing and all-knowing and all-powerful is humble. You see, we think too much of ourselves all the time, or too little of ourselves, but both of them are pride, because what it is that we make it all about me. That's why it's pride. And also when you do something good and you're proud of yourself, you begin to boast sometimes, at least in your head, but sometimes outwardly. Everybody says, what a big head, I don't like it. Who does he think he is anyway? Well, why don't we like big heads and boasters and arrogant people? Why don't we like them? Because we know that we're all flawed, including the one who's boasting, and no one is better than anyone else in the end. That is not the case with God. He can't be proud, not in the way we see it, because there's no one better than him, or higher than him, or perfect like him, or flawless like him. He is the ultimate. He's the only one that can boast. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself. I mean, that would be arrogant for any of us to do, but not for God, because he looks around and thinks, well, I am the top. I am the king. No one can compare with me. He had absolute right. There is no greater name than the name of Jesus, before whom every knee should bow, in heaven, on earth, and under the earth, even the demons, well before you, flat on their faces, Satan himself will hit the ground and lick the gravel, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. So the awesome thing about this is that God is humble. And so he washes their feet. And he washes their feet to show you that you must let him cleanse you if you're to be his. You must let him cleanse you if you're to be his. Verse 6. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? Jesus replied, you do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Let that sink in. Forget the feet for now. You do not know now what I am doing, but later you will understand. Apply that to the situation. No, said Peter, you will never wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. See, we think when we first look at this, that's typical Peter. He doesn't get it, so he kicks off. He tries to stop Jesus doing what Jesus needs to do. And he's similar to us, because when we don't understand, we try to take control, and we try to take away our trust from God, and try and do it all ourselves, and to stop God doing things because we don't understand what he's doing. And you and I, like Peter, have to let go, because God knows exactly what he's doing, especially when you don't. But let's give Peter a break, because Peter isn't doing that this time. Peter resists Jesus washing his feet out of humility and respect for who Jesus is. Peter has confessed previously that Jesus is the Son of the living God. So he can't accept that great God should do the work of a servant or a slave. He's far too great. He's thinking to himself, I can't allow the king to serve me. It's just topsy-turvy. It's wrong. But the king says you must. And if the king says it, then you must. You see, even God who is so great serves his people. How much more should you, Peter? How much more should you and I? So Jesus says, because they don't get it, you see, so explains it. Verse 12. Do you understand what I've done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash each other's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. There's suddenly a quick change in Peter. He gets it because it's been explained. So he gets it now, and Peter's suddenly all in. He was all out, now he's all in. The ocean country. Put your left foot in, your left foot out, shake it all about.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. But now he's all in. Good job for him. Verse 9. Then Lord, Simon Peter replied, not just my feet, my hands and my head as well. Go for it, Lord. I want to all in. And Jesus answered, the person who's had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, apart from Judas. Spiritually, you see, and it's a spiritual thing, it's not literal. In those days it was, no, we don't go around washing each other's feet. We've got shoes, we've got socks. Spiritually, Peter and the disciples, Jesus is saying, have already been cleansed by Jesus. But there was this one area, the feet, that kept getting dirty all the time. They only walk out the house and they're dirty again. And he must cleanse that area. And he must keep cleansing that area. Is there a part of you that keeps getting spiritually dirty with sin? A besetting sin. Something you keep going back to, like the dog to the vomit and the pig to the mud. Let Jesus cleanse and forgive and make new. And if you keep sinning, keep getting cleansed and having your feet washed spiritually by Jesus. To be in with Jesus, you need to be all in. And then lastly, now do likewise. It's the application. Verse 17. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you hear them now, if you do them. What things? Serving one another just like Jesus did. And serve even those who hate you. Even those you don't like. Jesus knew Jesus knew what Judas was about to do. He still washes his feet. I mean, it's crazy. He loved his enemies. He knew he was going to be betrayed in just a few hours. Love your enemies, not just those you love. It's easy to love those who love you. It's really, really hard to love those who don't like you, or you don't like them, or people who even hate you. To do good to them is supernatural. You can't do it yourself. You can do it with the Spirit. And we must. How did Jesus, a couple of examples, how did Jesus love his enemies and those that hated him after this event? Go. Amazingly, yeah. And they put the nails through and he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Unbelievable. Any other thing? Oh, I can't think of any either. But there were plenty, absolutely plenty, that he did after this and before this. He was always loving his enemies. If the God-man stooped as low as a servant and served at the lowest level, who are we not to help with tasks that you do? That means as you're going about your business, a couple of brothers stopped and they were late because they helped somebody in need on the way. That's what we're talking about. Personally, down your street, in your family, at school, at uni, wherever at work, wherever, if you can have an opportunity to show the love of Jesus, then do it. But we also need those who aren't already serving here at home. We've got plenty who are serving. And often in churches, Whenever something new needs to be done, people seem to assume that the ones who are already doing it are going to do that as well. That's not fair. We need people to serve and help on drinks. We've got some, it's great, but we need more. We need more people to help on the tech. We've got some, and it's great. We need some more. We need people to help clear away the chairs, and that can be anybody at the end of each service. We need people to join the Sunday school, either as a helper or a teacher when we're really short, when people have had to drop out. We need people who look around every Sunday and spot those who aren't being included and deliberately look for them and go to them. And there's a whole host of other things that we need as a church in order to be healthy. We need more people to pray for each other after the service. It can be a perfectly natural thing. You don't have to come up the front. You don't have to go to the side. If you want prayer, you can just stay in your seat. People come and pray with you. Or maybe if you're sitting next to somebody and afterwards you say, would you like prayer for anything? You can all do that. And when we get a building, we need people to help with the youth that we've got planned for. And coffee morning. And prayer and praise night. Our main church prayer meeting, which is so badly attended, will become a prayer and praise night. Now that, if nothing else, is a good reason to come. We need Seeking Jesus groups and people to help with that when we get the building. And this could be happening just in a few months. We don't know, do we? God's preparing us. So if you get involved now, you're already being prepared for what's going to come. And you will all share the load, you see, because there's plenty of exciting things ahead. But we can't do it with just a few people, say 10 out of a whole lot of it. And churches traditionally do that, and it's bad and it's wrong. We all need to play our part. A healthy church needs each person to be involved in something. That's all. Even if it's just a little thing, just something. So we as the body of Christ are loving Jesus by serving one another. And what happens if we do that, my friends? Personal and whole church blessing will come if we serve Him by serving one another. He loves it. That's how you serve Him, by serving one another. Verse 17, now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. James says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. It's actually deceptive if you go away and say, wow, that was a great word, and you do nothing about it. You're deceiving yourself. No benefit whatsoever. It says, do not listen to the word and so deceive yourself. Do what it says, not forgetting what you've heard, but doing it. How do you not forget? Because you live it. And when you live it, you can't forget it. And then if you do that, you'll be blessed in what you do. And the second thing and the last thing. Salvation will come to others if we serve Jesus by serving one another. Matthew 5:16. Let your light shine before men, that they will see your good works and praise your Father in heaven. Because the love of God is unlike any other love. If we manifest it between ourselves, other people say, I want what they've got. And they're blown away. I'm flawed, you're flawed, but we have Jesus and the Holy Spirit. And we can do what He asks us to do. And when we wash up, He's always there to wipe our slate, to wash our feet, to cleanse us from those filthy areas that we get ourselves stuck in. What an incredible Saviour we have. The Most High becomes the Most Low to save the Most Low and bring them higher. An incredible thing that we have. What a great thing it is to look at. Let's not lose sight of it. Let's look at it. In Jesus' name. Amen. Just pray as God comes up and we'll praise the Lord. And anybody, lots of people that will always happen to pray for. Thank you so much for the songs.